Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven. Today, our special guest is Rea Frey. Rea is the #1 best-selling author of several suspense, women's fiction, and nonfiction books. Known as a book doula, she also helps other authors birth their books into the world. So, welcome, Rea.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you want to be a writer.
Yeah, it's funny. I did not grow up actually wanting to be a writer like so many other authors. Writing was something I always did. I was a huge journaler and a huge reader, and my dad was a writer. But I actually grew up wanting to be an Olympic gymnast. So I was super into sports, love to move my body. But really, over the years, I always returned to writing. But I noticed that I did not see anybody in my life making writing a career. So I
Mhm.
learned very quickly that I was like, oh, writing's great, but this is a hobby. I'm not sure I can ever turn this into an actual career where I make money. But as kind of fate would have it, I ended up going to Columbia for creative writing. I started out as a journalism major and switched over and found that I just loved the craft so much. And it was something that I really, really enjoyed. Um, but again, I was in such a rush to become a published author. And I realized during my college career that in all 4 years of writing, I did not have a single business class on publishing, on how to make it a career, on how to make money. So I actually had a book come out when I was 22. It was traditionally published. It was a complete disaster, complete nightmare. And I felt so embarrassed by the end product. I did not do my due diligence. And so I actually took that experience and parlayed it into learning everything I could about the publishing industry. I worked at literary agencies. I became a ghostwriter, an editor. I started working with other authors because I really feel like this industry is very much behind a curtain. And a lot of times
Mhm.
people want to take a peek behind it and just see what it actually takes to be a writer. So, because of that unpleasant experience when I was young, I started working in every facet of the industry and really wanted to teach myself the business and not just the craft.
So, how did you learn that? Like, did you do more courses at school or did you talk to other publishers or?
Yeah, so no, it did not come from school.
Yeah.
Once I
School's
once
only
I
good to a certain
graduated,
extent, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean it's funny too because we romanticize the publishing industry, I feel like, and I saw in
Yes.
college, I saw all my professors, they were published authors, and all I could think about was like, ooh, I want to be just like that, but I did not know how to do that. So I sought out, like, once I graduated, I started again, I got a job at a literary agency because I wanted to know that part of the business. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be an agent, but I wanted to learn about it. And then I pivoted actually to nonfiction and started writing nonfiction books that got traditionally published as well in the health and wellness space. I started ghostwriting for people. I just started talking and getting my hands dirty and really talking to anyone and everyone I could. This was all before social media, so I actually had to like put my boots on the pavement and go talk to people and just learn what I could in the industry. And it was really organic. Like one thing kind of led to the next. It was a very relationship led business. And then before I knew it, I had four nonfiction books traditionally published, and then pivoted back to fiction. And Dear Mother is my ninth novel, so I've put out quite a few books over the years. And then also during that time, I've helped over 500 first-time authors land agents and book deals and become best-selling authors. So my whole world has been put into the publishing industry basket, which is kind of dangerous because it's such a tricky business, but I feel it's my duty not only to write books, but to help others on their journey and to avoid a lot of the same mistakes that I've made along the way.
Because you write across different genres, like suspense, women's fiction, nonfiction. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what draws you to doing so many different things?
Yeah, I'm trying to actually narrow my focus a little
Okay.
because in the beginning I did write nonfiction, but and I was in the health and wellness space for a long
Mhm,
time. I was a personal trainer, a nutritionist, I owned a gym. And so writing about health and wellness kind of seemed like an extension of that. But
mhm.
I realized very quickly for nonfiction, the author platform is so important, meaning you have to have a built-in audience to really do well with those books. And again, this was before social media really became the beast that it is today. So I found that like I liked writing nonfiction, but it didn't fulfill me on a soul level. Like I've always loved fiction. So when I turn back to fiction and have what I truly consider my true debut book, Not Her Daughter, which came out in 2018, I wasn't trying to write in a specific genre, but my publisher was like, "You're a domestic suspense writer," and I was like, "Okay." I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know
Yeah, what is
what
that?
genre
Yeah.
that was. Like, okay, sure. But I had written that book. That was a book that channeled. It came through me in a month. I wrote it in a month and got this 2 book deal, and then they gave me another 2 book deal, and then I got a movie deal, and all of a sudden I was in this one lane as a suspense writer, but I didn't have any other ideas. So I kind of panicked very, very publicly, actually, and was like, okay, I have to come up with 3 more suspense novels, which I did. But by the end of that, I really felt like, ooh, I kind of want to spread my wings a little bit and try to write in some other genres. And I know back, even like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, that wasn't really looked upon in a positive light to write in multiple genres. A lot of times publishers want you to pick a lane and stay in it. But I felt very passionate about like trying my hand at different things. So I went with a different publisher for 2 books in kind of the women's fiction space. I play a lot with time and like time slip stories where there's parallel universes or the ultimate like what if life, because I'm very interested in quantum physics and the many worlds theory and all that fun stuff. And then I also do write more thrillers and kind of darker, suspenseful books. But and I've never really been told like, oh, you have to just pick one. I've actually had supportive teams and letting me try my hands at different things. And I feel like a lot of writers are doing that now because if you are traditionally published, it is a long game. It takes a year or more for your book to come out. So a lot of writers feel like they're just twiddling their thumbs waiting for their next releases. So a lot of writers, which I love, are also independently publishing books in between their traditional releases and maybe trying out different genres or trying on different things. And I think that's the best part about being a creative is just really leaning into what is inspiring you. And sometimes that's not just one genre.
Now, do you use your same name or do you use a pen name for the
Yeah,
different?
great question. So I thought we would use a pen name. Well, number one, no one can pronounce my name. So it's like, can we come up with a pen name for one of these genres where people can actually pronounce it? But because I'd kind of established a readership, my
Yeah.
publishers wanted me to keep the same name, which is a little bit surprising. But I'm actually working with a friend. We're working on a pen name. We're going to do some fun Christmas romances, so thriller romances, and we're going to do that under a pen name. So I'm going to get my pen name dreams where people can pronounce my name in the near future, which is exciting.
Okay, now you're known as a book doula. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, what that means. So, if people have ever heard the term doula, it's usually attributed to someone who helps someone give birth, not actually give birth, but is there through the whole process. And I'm sure you've heard people liken the process of writing to giving birth, like, "Oh, this is my baby. I'm writing my book baby." And what I realized with my book coaching services is first of all, no 2 experiences are the same. When people come to me, they have a dream of writing a book, whether that is a novel, a nonfiction book, it can be a memoir, self-help book, whatever, poetry, kids books. They might want to traditionally publish or independently publish. And what I do with them is we get very clear on their goals. We talk about the different paths to publication and then the process to get there. And then no matter what their goal is, I help them from that very like teeny tiny kernel of an idea all the way up to publication. So sometimes I'm with people for like a year at a time, not always. Like I have all different sorts of containers, but I really am with them through the birth of their books. And one of my girlfriends who's kind of a genius branding person, she was like, you're a total book doula. Like you need to just call yourself that. So, I do say I'm a book coach, but sometimes it's fun to throw that term in because people are like, what does that mean? What do you do? Well,
Now, you've worked with a lot of writers, so what are the most common struggles you see people go through?
gosh, I mean, the funniest struggle I think of being a writer, and it's a universal one, is just actually writing the book. Like so many writers do not take the time to write the book, or they're thinking about an idea for so many years, but books can't come out into the world until you actually sit down and write it. So everyone's so busy. There's always a million things to do. I mean, we spend 8 to 11 hours on our devices every day, but we can't find 30 minutes or an hour for creativity. So priorities is number one. That's one of the biggest obstacles that I see, is just prioritizing your creativity or prioritizing your book. And then the biggest struggles I see are just, again, like I said earlier, this is a very romanticized industry. So defining your own level of success, what success means to you, not what it means to other people, not what you're seeing on TikTok or Instagram, but like what it means to you and why you want to write this book and what you want the book to do in the world. When we can get really clear on that, it is so amazing what happens when there's clarity around like, oh, I want my book to do this. I want it to come out on this date. And then it just really streamlines their focus and process, because I think the absolute biggest struggle people face is overwhelm with not knowing what to do next or which publication path to take.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you, what advice do you give writers who are stuck and overwhelmed and they're
Yeah.
afraid?
I mean, I know it sounds so simple, but the first thing is just getting very clear on what you actually want. Whether you just want to write a novel because you've always wanted to see your book on a shelf, or you're writing a nonfiction book and you want a book to help legitimize your brand or business, or you want to draw in more revenue because you want to land a bunch of speaking gigs and you think a book will really help you. Once you can identify that goal, the process can be very, very simple. I mean, if you're going to independently publish, that looks completely different from trying to sell a nonfiction book if you were traditionally publishing. So understanding, I think the quote unquote rules to publication, which with whatever publication path you take, that can reduce the overwhelm because there's an actual path to follow. There's actual steps to follow, even though no two journeys are the same.
Well, let's talk about your latest book. So can you tell us a synopsis and what inspired it?
Yeah, Dear Mother, which I have right here. Yeah, so Dear Mother is about an investigative journalist named Isabel Archer who grew up in this teeny tiny town, population 50, in Cedar Lock, Washington. So very tippy top Pacific Northwest. And she had a very tumultuous childhood and has stayed away from 25 years. For 25 years, she moved away the first chance she could. But she gets news that her estranged mother has passed away and she has to come back to kind of settle the estate. But it really reminds her of all the tragedy that struck when she was a child. Three of her foster siblings died very mysteriously in a fire when Isabel was only 13, and the whole town thought her mother was responsible for it. So her mother was really ostracized in the community. No one could ever prove anything, but Isabel has just terrible feelings about her mother. When she comes back to bury her, the autopsy reports show that her mother may have actually been murdered. And so Isabel undergoes this investigation to see if what happened to her siblings was somehow connected to her mother's own murder. And she really tries to get to the bottom of it. So it's a fun, fast thriller. It's my shortest book that I've ever written, but early readers are like, I got through this in 3 hours. So it's a really, really fun book, but I am obsessed with writing about parenthood, specifically mother-child relationships. It wasn't until I became a mother that I started writing about mothers, but mothers who will do anything to protect their children, mothers who do unspeakable things, mothers who make incredible sacrifices. So I kind of wanted to explore all that in this book specifically.
Oh gosh, I'm very impressed. I mean, I'm a mother too, but like I find it very difficult to write these days. Uh,
It's so, I mean, I kind of work out my worst fears as a parent on the page with like
yes.
kidnappings. I've written about, child
Yes.
losses. And I was a journalist on death row
Mhm.
for years and actually
Oh.
worked on a really big case of a mother who was accused of drowning her three children. And this was before I became a mother, but it was just such a master class in the psychology of like a mother being pushed to her limits and how we label people and judge people without really ever knowing what's going on beneath the surface.
Oh, definitely. Now, was the most challenging thing about writing this book?
Oh, let me just tell you. So this book was so different from any of my other books. So I wrote this book. I turned it in early. I was so excited. I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if my editors just had no notes? Because it's great. Like my agent loved it. I felt so confident. Long story short, I have two editors at this publisher. They hated the book. Like we did a Zoom call. They spent 10 minutes telling me everything they hated about it. And they said, you have to scrap it and start over. And I was so thrown because I was like, wait, I can't keep anything from this book. And they were like, nope, start over. So I threw the entire book away and I rewrote. I came up with a new idea kind of on the spot and kept the town and the protagonist's name, changed everything else, and rewrote this book in 2 weeks.
Oh my
And
God.
I have never written something. I'm a fast writer, but it was
Yeah.
such a pressure cooker. So I was really worried. I was like, oh, I have to cobble this together. Everybody's going to hate it. It seems like it's written by a third grader because I had to write it so fast, but it actually turned out like better than I thought. And it's a much better story. But I have never had to completely throw an entire book away and start over, which just goes to show you even 9 books in, I'm like, this creative process, when you bring other people into it, when you have
Yes.
editors, it is never just a foregone conclusion that you can just, oh, this is great, and I can put out what I want. There are always opinions, and I've learned not to get attached to my material because it is going to change. But this really pushed me in a way that I've never been pushed before. But I'm actually glad I went through it, honestly.
Oh, I'm almost tempted. Oh, I'm tempted to ask. Okay, maybe I will ask. Were the editors male or females?
They were female,
Okay, okay, okay.
and they're great, but like, yeah, they really gave it to me straight. And I was like, okay, I always say I'm not sensitive and I'm not precious about my material. And
Yep.
they actually pushed me on that. And so I really had to dig deep. And also I had just gotten done writing another book. And
Mhm.
if you're an author, you know, when you're ready to do edits, that is very different than having to start over and write a book. And I was not in that headspace of I've got to rewrite, 70, 80,000 words. I thought I was just about to go into developmental edits, which
Mhm.
is a completely different headspace. So that was also really challenging. But again, I proved to myself, I'm like, oh, you can do hard things. You can get through this.
Okay. Now what do you hope readers will feel or reflect after they read your
Ooh, yeah, I really, again, I always love like kind of asking readers, if they were in my protagonist's shoes, like what would they do? What choices would they make? But for this one, I just think it's so easy to judge mothers, like in
Mhm.
general, and I really want them to think about the actions. There's actually multiple mothers in this book and mothers who don't always make the best choices, and just to really think about what they would have done if they were in their shoes. And it ends on a little kind of sinister twist. So I want it to linger with readers and for them to still think about the characters and the situation at hand.
I think, well, I'm just thinking about like some of my friends too. A lot of it has to do with mental health too. Like sometimes
Oh,
you're not judging, you try to help, but then they blow up and you're just like, what is happening here? Like, I'm not judging you really. I'm just like trying to give advice as a friend, but then, things go
completely.
crazy and you're like, oh my God, what happened? You know?
And I always like my first book that became Not Her Daughter. I wrote it based on an interaction between a mother-daughter that I saw in an airport where a mother was physically and verbally abusing her child. And I remember thinking like, "Oh, is this a bad mother or is she just having a bad
Yes,
day?" And
exactly.
who are we to ever say? But I feel like sometimes judgment is or just motherhood is up for public consumption and again with social media it's so easy to like comment and say whatever you want to but no one really knows what's going on behind closed doors except those people
Yeah,
the mother and child
yes,
themselves.
it's true. So what happens or routine help you stay consistent as a writer?
That's such a great question. One of the things that I've been doing recently, because yes, I write, full time, but I also have this coaching business. So it's very hard to juggle, if I'm working with 10, 11 writers, it's sometimes hard to prioritize my own writing. So what I have recently started doing, which is incredible, is my first working hour, which is not a lot, but I focus on my own creative writing first. Or if I have something to do with a book tour, editing, I devote that first hour of my day to my own work before I'm doing anything else and focusing on anyone else. And it's incredible what you can get done. Like if you just do that targeted focused hour, no open tabs on my computer, no phone, no distractions, and just really doing that deep work first thing in the morning is wonderful. I also have a writing studio. I have a little tiny home on the back of my acre property. It has no Wi-Fi, so I can go in there and just really, really concentrate on writing for the day and just consistency. I
Mhm.
used to say, "Oh, you don't have to write every day," but I find that in the past, I would, write and get great momentum, and then I would just leave it. I would like busy myself with anything else for like weeks or even months at a time. So for me, I'm really trying to keep that momentum and consistency going and doing at least 30 minutes to an hour every single day when I am working on a book. And that really helps me just stay motivated, honestly.
Now, what's the biggest myth about writing or publishing that you want to debunk?
Ugh, that just because you write and get published, that you're going to sell a million copies and be a New York Times bestseller and like
Yeah.
everything is roses. I mean, the biggest myth I think is that, you know, it that it's somehow just like easy or like winning the lottery and like writing is so great and being a published author is wonderful, but it is a business. This is a business. Your book is a product to sell. I say that all the time. And so learning about the business, I think, is sometimes more important than spending all your time on craft. Like when you get into this business, you need to understand how deals are done, how you're getting paid, how to read a contract, how to advocate for yourself. So I think I would love to debunk that it's just this like dreamy, amazing profession, which it is, but it is also a business, and it's really important to learn that along the way.
Okay, one last question before the book reading. Now, if you could give one essential piece of advice to someone beginning their writing journey, what would it be?
Mm. I think ask questions. I mean, beyond writing a book, like find the authors who are doing what you want to be doing, leading careers that you want to be leading, publishing the type of books that you want to be publishing, and find a way to connect with them. When I was starting out, I was shocked at how generous the writing population is and how willing they were to other authors were to answer questions that I had. I feel like a lot of times authors don't ask questions. We just like don't don't want to step on any toes. So I would entrench yourself in this world. Again, learn about the business, ask questions, see what other people are doing, and really form relationships too. This is a relationship driven business. Start connecting with readers, even if you don't have a book yet. And again, just really, really putting yourself out there and asking as many questions as you can.
All right, you're going to do a book reading, so can you give us a bit of context before you start?
Yeah, the good news is this is chapter one. So people just need to know right before chapter one is a little newspaper article about Isabel Archer's foster mother who has recently died, and just all of the suspicion surrounding a fire that occurred 25 years earlier that resulted in three of Isabel's foster siblings to die. So all of this is being brought back to the surface because her mother has just died. But that's basically all anybody needs to know. This is
Okay.
chapter one. Isabel stood over the graves. Her daughter scratched her nose and sighed. Where are they? Despite being back in this place to say goodbye to a mother she hadn't spoken directly to in years, Isabel smiled. Don't you mean who are they? No. Maisie scrunched her nose. A few freckles dusted the skin, pinked by the harsh beginning of summer. I mean, where? Maisie was 8, a smart child, but sensitive like her father, Jack. How could Isabel possibly explain the trappings of religious beliefs or drum up a more spiritual explanation? Isabel shifted, considering. Well, where do you think we go when we die? I think we come back as something new. Isabel patted her on the head. She loved that Maisie could reduce one of life's biggest questions to something so simple. We come back as something new. After the atrocities Isabel had experienced growing up, she'd lost that sense of purity. She would move heaven and earth to sustain it in Maisie for as long as she possibly could. They stood like that for a moment as Isabel paid her respects to her three siblings, buried deep in the woods behind the Archer house, and now to her mother, a fresh, much larger grave beside them. Isabel shuddered. You shouldn't outlive your family. It wasn't natural. But then again, nothing was natural in Cedar Lock. Carved from the forest more than a century ago, Cedar Lock was a place where men chased timber and opportunity. At its peak, the town thrived on endless pines and the sawmill that chewed through them day and night. But the forest gave out before the people did. The mill eventually closed, the loggers left, and the woods began to reclaim what had been taken. Back then, the only way in or out was by boat, float plane, or hiking in. Now, with a population of fewer than 50, if you lived here, you chose to be here. Isabel was happy to see that they carved some roads into the dirt, and she could now get her truck up to the cabin at least. When she was younger, she had to trek 2 miles to get into town. She used to dream about swimming across the Lady of the Lake or boarding the town ferry and spilling into other territory. Finally, when she was old enough, she had. By then, grief was one of her closest companions. Despite never growing up with a father, once she lost her two foster brothers and foster sister, the pain had marched in, swallowing her up completely. After, she'd been afraid of everything, shrinking into herself until she felt like a shell. It seemed almost everyone she loved disappeared. After a moment of paying their respects, they trudged back toward the cabin, cracking over dried brambles and thicker sticks. The trees were just as she remembered them, expansive and all-consuming. The ground beneath them was a bed of dead needles, spongy beneath their soles. She cast a palm out, let her fingers trail along the various barks, which peeled back like skin. Isabel pointed out the names of trees and plants that she remembered. Wyeth's biscuit root, yarrow, devil's club, Pacific willow, western red cedar, subalpine fir, ponderosa pine. Maisie loved wildlife, had an affinity for flowers. Maybe they'd start a garden this year. Yes, that's what they do, a garden, something to grow, something to nurture. Isabel tried to tell herself they wouldn't be here long. They'd clean the cabin, get it ready to sell, and disappear. On the drive up, Maisie had been shocked to hear she'd had a grandmother all this time who lived mere hours away. Isabel had seen the hurt in her eyes, and she understood why. She'd kept this secret from Maisie, kept someone away who could have loved her and spent time with her. But how could Isabel possibly explain that she could never trust her mother with Maisie? Everything her mother touched turned bad. She couldn't let that happen to her own daughter. Her other foster sister, Harper, would disagree with her, of course. They were former best friends turned sisters. Gail had taken in Harper once Harper's mother died unexpectedly. Then, after the fire, it had been only Harper, Isabel, and Gail again. Back then, Harper and Isabel would often stay up late into the night whispering about Gail, afraid of what might happen to them too. Gail was a complicated woman. She loved order and control. She ran a tight ship, had high expectations, and often withheld love and kindness as punishment. Isabel often felt her mother had been slightly softer with her because she was her only biological child, and yet she had never felt deeply connected to her mother. Even now, while she searched for grief, what she really felt was relief. Isabel left Cedar Lock the first moment she could, but Harper stayed behind. And Harper had been good about staying in touch over the years. Letters, texts, FaceTime, a handful of visits here and there. But it was always on Isabel's terms, always Harper coming to her, even though Harper had her own farm to tend to and a child to raise. Isabel was stubborn like her mother and had refused to visit Cedar Lock. Jack made a joke that her mother died just to get her to come home. Maybe in some supernatural way, Gail had. And maybe one day she could explain to Maisie how complicated her childhood had been, but not now. Your mom sure had a lot of stuff. Maisie stopped, huffed, threaded her fingers into her doll's matted hair. She gestured to the oversized trash bags lined up outside the back door, like dead bodies wrapped in tarps. Harper had gotten a head start before she arrived, which Isabel was grateful for. There were so many bags, she'd had to call to see if she could get a dumpster out here. She knew it was a fat chance, and she was right. There was one a mile outside of town. Thank God for her ex's pickup truck, something she convinced Jack to keep after a bit of a fight. Yeah, she did. Isabel gnawed on the inside of her cheek until it was raw, wondering if it was the right thing bringing Maisie here. But because Jack would be traveling on assignment, they traded summers. This one was hers, so she didn't really have much of a choice. Hopefully we can get out of here in a day or two, Bug. Maisie nodded, her large gray eyes raking over the woods. Must have been lonely growing up here. Actually, it wasn't. My brothers and sisters and I would play like we lived in these woods. We weren't afraid of anything. Isabel was shocked to realize, as she said it, that it was mostly true. They felt they'd owned this land, exploring it, conquering it, claiming it. With her siblings, she always had someone to play with, someone to talk to. After the fire, Isabel spent years trying to shed the survivor's guilt she could never seem to shake. Harper had survived too, of course, but the void her siblings left couldn't be filled by only one person. It couldn't be filled by anyone. Though Isabel didn't like to discuss her past outside of therapy, one question plagued her for years. Why had she and Harper been spared? And then there were the darker questions, the ones she couldn't ask, the fears she couldn't touch. Mama, what's this? Maisie's voice broke the silence as she kicked at something in the dirt. Let me see. Isabel's mind was all over the place. So many things to clean, collect, toss, and sell. It shocked her, all the random objects collected in one's life. And after, they became someone else's problem to deal with. As if the grief wasn't hard enough, you had to sift through all those reminders too. Isabel crouched and brushed away the dirt. She recoiled, a small gasp startling Maisie. They looked like bones. A rabbit, maybe? She dusted away a bit more of the dirt, tracing the outline of what appeared to be a finger, smaller than hers. No. She swallowed, her gut aching. Come on, sweetie, let's go inside. Maisie protested, but Isabel ushered her in through the back door, into the must of the house that was still so cluttered despite hours of Harper's initial head start. Her heart pounded wickedly as flashes of memory hit her consciousness. Bones, dirt, shovels. She needed to forget.
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh gosh, I come back on, I look like a ghost. But
Okay.
anyhow, all right, thank you. The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Heel Express. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.